Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a very powerful team in the Open Ultra League that helped this trainer go on a 17-game win streak and climb up to 3,500 ELO. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now the team consists of Shadow Dragonite on the lead, and in the back, he's running Shadow Charizard and Cobalion, and this trainer uses this double Shadow team to devastating effectiveness. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and check out the team in action in the Ultra League. Hopping into the first match and seeing a very tough lead, Shadow Dragonite into Regirock. Regirock has the speed advantage in this matchup, able to make it to the Stone Edge before Dragonite is able to make it to a superpower. Dragonite is going to expend a shield, looking to overfarm quite a bit and fire off the superpower. Going for the kill shot here, Regirock does respect it with a shield, farming up with the Dragonite and a beautiful catch, catching the Stone Edge onto Cobalion, saving energy on the Dragonite while wasting the opponent's. Opponent goes for a Sacred Sword catch onto the Cresselia, but great patience, hanging onto the energy, and now getting to fire off the Stone Edge. This is not a winning matchup for Cobalion, but honestly, it doesn't have to be, as at this point of the match, winning this matchup isn't as important as actually soft losing it, and then letting Shadow Charizard get a big energy advantage. Because obviously, the third Pokemon is still not known yet, but Shadow Charizard up energy can basically beat just about anything in the format. They're going to fire off the Moonblast here. Moonblast is going to be lethal, and now in comes Shadow Charizard. Shadow Charizard just looking to get a massive energy head start. Cresselia firing off the charge move. We see the no shield from the Shadow Charizard. Moonblast is going to be resisted. Shadow Charizard farming up just shy of the back-to-back Blast Burns, and a Dragon Claw will be lethal. Now Regirock does have energy stored. In comes the Regirock, and we see a switch back into the Shadow Dragonite. Dragonite will fire off the Dragon Claw. That is not quite enough to KO. Stone Edge would be lethal, so we do see a shield from the Shadow Dragonite. In the back, opponent has a Shadow Dragonite of their own, able to make the last second Dragon Claw, but the opponent is going to exit this matchup with a move. It's going to come down to CMP. Shadow Charizard wins CMP over the Dragonite. The attack weight on the Charizard, winning the CMP, KOing that Dragonite. In comes the Regirock, but they're all out of energy. Shadow Charizard takes down Regirock, and that's a good game. Moving into the next match, leading Shadow Dragonite into Giratina Altered. This matchup depends on the fast move of the Giratina, and they're also running Dragon Breath. This is not great news for the Dragonite, as this means that Giratina is able to win the Zero Shield, as Giratina can tank a Dragon Claw, but Dragonite definitely cannot. Dragonite is going to shield once and look to farm down. Opponent does not want to let that happen. They save switch into Shadow Alolan Sandslash, and that is getting absolutely crushed by double super effective damage from Cobalion. Opponent fully sacrifices the Sandslash, and now they're going to be sending in Giratina Altered. Giratina tries to go for the CMP tie, but Cobalion ends up getting an entire double kick for free by not throwing its move. Cobalion massively overfarming, going for the double resisted Sacred Sword here, going for an undercharge as well, gets the perfect undercharge and the farm down. In the back, it's a Shadow Swampert, and Shadow Swampert has a shield advantage, but it is incredibly far behind in terms of energy, as Cobalion is able to make it to Sacred Sword after Sacred Sword after Sacred Sword. Able to grab a shield, we see an aggressive switch back into the Shadow Dragonite. Shadow Dragonite is going to let this Hydro Cannon through. Hydro Cannon is resisted. It will be enough to KO. Back in comes Cobalion, and again, Cobalion taking advantage of that energy head start and grabbing the final shield from the Shadow Swampert. Cobalion farming up, perfect charge move timing from the opponent. Cobalion is going to commit the shield here, go for the Sacred Sword, and that will be game over. So opponent had the shield advantage, but Cobalion's energy, thanks to the undercharge, was way too much to handle. Picking up a great lead in the next match, Shadow Dragonite into Shadow Swampert. Opponent will need to immediately save switch out of here, and they send in Walrein. Walrein, of course, does have access to Earthquake, which would hit for super effective damage, but this is not the Shadow Walrein, meaning that Cobalion is able to tank that Earthquake and not be in a range where Powder Stones will threaten to farm down. Cobalion has massively overfarmed, going for the Sacred Sword, and building up and going for Sacred Sword number 2, putting a lot of pressure on that final shield. Opponent is double shielding, trying to make a play for switch advantage, but Cobalion will be able to maintain switch here. Cobalion is going to have to start shielding Icicle Spears, but is going to make the Stone Edge. This does more damage than a Sacred Sword in this matchup, and Stone Edge secures the KO. So not only did Cobalion keep switch advantage, it got a shield advantage as well. In the back, opponent is running Pidgeot, and in comes the Shadow Charizard. The correct play here is definitely to no shield. Even if they Brave Bird, which they do, they're now debuffed, which means Shadow Dragonite can very comfortably close out this game. Dragonite fires off the Dragon Claw, the debuffed Pidgeot gets easily KO'd, and in comes that Shadow Swampert. Swampert farming up energy, but it's not gonna matter. Shadow Dragonite makes the superpower, taking down the Shadow Swampert, and that's game over. Tough lead in the next match, Shadow Dragonite into Clefable. This team is ABA weak to Clefable, going to send in Cobalion. Opponent counter switches into Shadow Swampert, but importantly, they were slow on that counter swap. This means that Cobalion is going to make it to double Sacred Sword before they make an Earthquake, and Cobalion can now dictate either switch advantage or shield advantage. Opponent is going to go down a shield, but honestly, that is preferred. The Cobalion save switch not only did it bait out the Swampert, but it managed to get a shield advantage as well. So despite a really unfortunate lead, things are honestly going very well in this matchup, as now Shadow Dragonite will be able to commit to the farm down if it wants, leave with energy, and then you have Shadow Charizard up a shield versus whatever the opponent is going to have in the back. Very easy no shield on the Shadow Dragonite. Hydro Cannon does a lot of damage, and the aggressive switch into the Shadow Charizard to get ahead on energy. In the back, opponent has their own Shadow Charizard. Opponent firing off a charge move, and we will see the immediate shield from the Zard. Opponent full sends the Hail Mary Blast Burn, and they concede the match. Great lead in the next match as Shadow Dragonite meets Greedent. Opponent will save switch into Tentacruel, going to stay in this matchup with the Shadow Dragonite and get some chip damage. Dragon Claw, of course, will not threaten a KO, but it definitely adds up against the bulky Tentacruel. Tentacruel has farmed up to a potential Sludge Wave. We see the shield from the Shadow Dragonite, but it's the Acid Spray. That is very unfortunate. Shadow Dragonite makes the Dragon Claw. This will be lethal unless the opponent shields. They shield, and now we see a switch into Cobalion. Cobalion looking to take this opportunity to get a very big energy lead. As if Cobalion gets enough energy, that Greedent is going to have a terrible day being sent in. Cobalion looks like it's going for the farm down of the Tentacruel here. Tentacruel goes for the Acid Spray. They pivot back into the Greedent, and oh my goodness, even with the lower defense, this is a terrible spot for Greedent to be in. This entire team is extremely strong into the Greedent. Greedent fires off the Body Slam. Despite the debuff defense, Cobalion tanks that very well and has over 2 Sacred Swords here. Sacred Sword is going to connect. We see a switch into Dragonite, taking advantage of the desync timers. In the back, it is Skuntank. Skuntank will be met with the Shadow Dragon Claw. This is survivable, but it definitely adds up, so we will see a shield from the Skuntank. And now, sending back in Cobalion. I really like the pivoting that's being done in this match right here. Just taking advantage of desync timers, saving energy, switching in and out, letting the Cobalion go, and it's just the crunch. That's not gonna cut it. Sacred Sword will get the Skunk low. Skunk gets the farm down, but this is just farm for Shadow Zard. Zard can very easily shield the crunch, and Zard finishes out this game in style as the Tentacruel runs out of HP. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Shadow Dragonite into Giratina Altered. Again, let's check the fast move. This one is running Shadow Claw. With Shadow Claw, Dragonite should be able to win the Zero Shield if it wants to, but preserving health on the Shadow Dragonite definitely seems to be a priority with the team. A Registeel save switch after gaining shield advantage will be answered by Cobalion. Cobalion can tank any one move here. Opponent goes for the Zap Cannon, looking for the debuff, and they are successful. Zap Cannon, of course, with that 66% debuff chance, and unfortunately, Cobalion now has its damage reduced. Cobalion farming up to 2 more Sacred Swords, looking to put some pressure onto the Registeel. Sacred Sword number 1 is going to connect, going for Sacred Sword number 2. Cobalion going for an undercharge here, intentionally leaving health on the Registeel. This will be lethal, but instead of trying to go for switch advantage, instead going for energy on the Dragonite. Opponent is going to send in their Shadow Charizard, but Charizard, while it has a shield advantage, is behind on energy by quite a bit. A Shadow Dragonite makes 2 Dragon Claws before the opponent is able to reach 1. And now we see a switch into the mirror. Shadow Charizard can tank any one move here, but wanting to try and preserve HP, shields up what ends up being the Dragon Claw. This is the back-to-back Dragon Claws being thrown. Opponent now out of energy. The Charizard will be able to overfarm slightly, go for the Dragon Claw, and this should be lethal. And then all the opponent has left is the Giratina in the back. They go for the catch onto the Registeel, but it's not successful. Great patience. And now Shadow Charizard gets to sweep the day. Dragon Claw number 1 gets the Giratina low, and Dragon Claw number 2 will be the dagger. Great gameplay on both sides, but Shadow Charizard takes the win. We see a very tough lead in the next match, Shadow Dragonite into Alolan Sandslash. Immediate save switch into the Shadow Charizard. Shadow Charizard, of course, can easily one-shot with Blast Burn, but Ace Slash has a pretty big pacing advantage as it gets to the Ice Punch every 10 turns, whereas unfortunately, Charizard, it's 14 turns to the first Blast Burn and 12 to the rest. Charizard goes for the Dragon Claw versus the Poliwrath, able to grab a shield, and with shield advantage, just choosing to let the Charizard go. Baiting out the counter user is honestly huge, as that should hopefully free up Cobalion to do well in the endgame. We are going to see a shield from the Shadow Dragonite, as Dragonite does not have a good matchup into the Alolan Sandslash, but up energy here, it can go for superpowers that will absolutely tear the Sandslash to shreds. Sandslash now in a very difficult position of being massively behind on energy. They send in the Sandslash, no baits from the Dragonite, that one-shots the A-Slash in the back. It's Virizion, and this is tough, needing to send in Cobalion into a losing matchup, because that's going to reset the debuffs from Superpower on the Shadow Dragonite. Firing off the Sacred Sword, just looking to do as much damage as possible. This Sacred Sword will not KO the Cobalion, but it will get it quite low. Cobalion firing off another Sacred Sword. Did that end up being a CMP tie here? That is shielded. It's a CMP tie, and that's just game. Opponent needs to try and go for an undercharge and a double kick farm down here. They do not, and I mean, this game is over then. I mean, either way, they were in a very tough spot, but Shadow Dragonite with the superpower takes another win. We see a tricky lead in the next match, Shadow Dragonite into Cresselia. Not only is Cresselia extremely bulky, but Moonblast will hit for massive super effective damage. Overfarming, looking for the Moonblast catch. Unfortunately, that is unsuccessful, and Cobalion will be answered by Virizion. So not only is this difficult alignment, but failing the catch means that Cresselia will have a lot of energy to potentially pull shields off the Dragonite later in the game. Sacred Sword will be no-shielded by the Virizion, continuing to farm up, hoping for a CMP tie, but it's not going to happen. Opponent going for the extra double kick. They will have to throw, or Cobalion would have made it to a third move, so that's great energy awareness by the opponent. And now, do you send in the Zard or the Dragonite? Honestly, either way, it's pretty good to get an energy head start. Sending in the Charizard here. Shadow Charizard will comfortably be able to tank the Sacred Sword and just look to get an energy lead to help deal with that Cresselia. Oh man, and it's a Shadow Swampert farming up, going for the catch. Is that the CMP sack swap? Let's see it. Dragon Claw connects. It's the CMP sack swap. What a play. Oh my goodness. As now the opponent wastes the Hydro Cannon and you can just trust in Shadow Charizard to sweep. That is absolutely unreal. And now Shadow Charizard should be in a position to close out this endgame. Charizard commits the shield. Cresselia is running Future Sight. That is a massive shield. Going to full send the Shadow Blast Burn here, putting pressure onto the Cresselia. Cresselia commits the shield, farming up with the Charizard. Charizard looking to try and cap on energy here, burning the final shield as Cress goes for a second Future Sight. Now Charizard is at 100 energy, firing off the Blast Burn, going for an undercharge. That's not going to KO. Opponent does not give Charizard the farm. They send in the Swampert. Swampert met with a Dragon Claw. That gets shielded, but Shadow Charizard will not be denied, making another Dragon Claw, KOing the Swampert. In comes Cresselia. They cannot make a move. What a game. Hopping into the final match, and Shadow Dragonite is once again met with its favorite lead, Swampert. Immediate safe switch into Registeel, which will be countered with Cobalion. Cobalion going for the Sacred Sword before they can potentially throw a Zap Cannon. I do like this play quite a bit, as guaranteeing non-debuffed damage means that they're probably more likely just to full send the Focus Blast here. And if they do, Focus Blast will connect. Cobalion should make 3 Sacred Swords before they make 2 Focus Blasts, as long as the switch was fast enough. This Sacred Sword is going to connect onto the Registeel. Cobalion is able to get there, and this Sacred Sword will, of course, be lethal. Sacred Sword is no shielded. Opponent sends in Shadow Charizard. Charizard looking for the farm down. Cobalion makes the Sacred Sword. This is resisted. It will still deal some chip damage. Opponent commits the shield. Either they really value health on that Shadow Charizard, or it was a potential miscount from the opponent. Shadow Charizard lets it through, calls the Dragon Claw bait. That is a massive call, firing off the Dragon Claw into the opponent. Opponent commits the shield. They're down 2 shields, and they concede the match. All in all, this feels like a very strong team to use if you're looking to make a potential push to rank up or even make a push for Legend in these final weeks of the Ultra League this season. I will say Shadow Dragonite is just extremely oppressive on the lead, and the combination of the Shadow Dragonite plus the Shadow Charizard, neither one are particularly tanky, but man, they are both just absurdly good when it comes to pressuring the opponents into a shield deficit or dealing massive damage if they decide to hold on to their shields. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.